Greetings, this is the Grumpy Old Slan, and today we're going to be looking at 8th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana. As we can see from the list, there are 20 spells, of which 4 are new. Those are the ones we're going to be looking at. The first spell is Binding. It has a range of 1 inch. Casting time, duration, saving throw are all special, and the area of effect is 1 creature. A binding spell enables the caster to capture a creature from the lower planes. The subject must already be confined by some sort of restraining diagram. The duration of the spell depends upon the form of the binding and the level of the casters, as well as the length of time the spell is actually uttered. The components vary according to the form of the Dwemer, but include a continuous chanting utterance read from the scroll or book page giving the spell, gestures appropriate to the form of binding, and materials such as miniature chains of special metal, iron for demonkind, silver for diabolical creatures, nickel for the minions of Hades, etc. Soporific herbs of the rarest sort, a diamond or corundum gem of great size, 1,000 gold piece value per hit dice of the subject creature, and a vellum depiction or carved statuette of the subject to be captured. A saving throw is not applicable as long as the experience levels of the casters is or are at least twice as great as the hit dice of the subject. In a case where the foregoing does not hold, then the subject gains a saving throw versus spell, modified by the form of binding being attempted, and the relative ratio of levels of experience of the casters to the subject creature's hit dice. For purposes of determining this number, the level of the principal caster is augmented by 1/3 of the level of experience of each assistant magic user of 9th or higher level, and an additional level is gained for each assistant of 4th to 8th level. No more than 6 other magic users can assist with a binding spell. The various forms of binding are these. Chaining. The subject is confined by restraints, which generate an antipathy affecting all creatures who approach the subject except the caster. Duration is as long as 1 year per level of the casters. The subject of this form of binding, as well as of slumber and bound slumber, see below, remain within the restraining diagram. Slumber brings a comatose sleep upon the subject for a duration of up to 1 year per level of the casters. Bound slumber, a combination of chaining and slumber which lasts for up to 1 month per level of the casters. Hedged prison, the subject is transported to or otherwise brought within a confined area from which it may not wander by any means until freed. The Dwemer remains until the magical hedge is somehow broken. Metamorphosis causes the subject to change to some non-corporeal form, save for its head or face. The binding is permanent until some prescribed act frees the subject. Minimus containment. The subject is shrunk to a height of 1 inch or even less and held within the hedged prison of some gem or similar object. The subject of a minimus containment, metamorphosis, or hedged prison radiates a very faint aura of magic. The saving throw, if applicable, is made at the normal level for the chaining form of the spell. Slumber allows the subject a +1, bound slumber a +2, hedged prison a +3, metamorphosis a +4, and minimus containment a +5 on the save. However, if the subject is initially weakened by magical means such as dolor or torment spells, the saving throw is subject to an adjustment of -1 for the former spell, -2 for the latter spell, and -4 for both in successive combination. A successful saving throw enables the subject to burst its bonds and do as it pleases. A binding spell can be renewed in the case of the first 3 forms of the Dwemer, for the subject does not have the opportunity to break the bonds. After 1 year, the subject gains a normal saving throw versus spell. Whenever it is successful, the binding spell is broken and the subject creature is free. If anything has caused a weakening of the chaining or slumber, such as attempts to contact the subject or magically touch it, a normal saving throw applies to the renewal of the spell. another one of a whole bunch of spells that are clearly there to deal with extraplanar creatures. I won't comment too much, but I will point out that some of the wording is a little bit confusing. You can have the assistant magic users of certain levels. If they're 4th to ninth level, they won't be able to memorize an 8th level spell. So what is it that they have to memorize instead? Clearly, some sort of spell slot should be used. It's not clear. This is really the kind of spell where I wish the DM section of the book had actually extra information. There's a lot of very open things. If you run the kind of campaign, which I tend to do, where the spells found tend to be more or less random, modules where the scrolls that are found happen to always be the exact spell that you're going to need in the next leg of the adventure feel a little bit too contrived for me. And we are starting to need some serious number of spells here. You need some sort of spell to bring the creature forth, then you want to be able to cast the binding spell. Perhaps you'll want to use Dolor or Torment to improve your chances of applying the binding, particularly if you don't have enough assistance to significantly help you. And if you follow the rules for research, expect your magic user to not take part in any adventuring for probably years of campaign time. The next spell is Demand. Its range and duration and saving throw are all special. The casting time is 1 turn, and the area of effect is 1 creature. This spell is essentially the same as a sending spell. Demand differs from sending in that the spellcaster may phrase his or her message so as to contain a suggestion spell, and if the subject fails to make its saving throw versus spell, it will do its best to carry out the suggestion contained in the message of the demand. Of course, if the message is relatively impossible or incongruous according to the circumstances which exist for the subject at the time the demand comes, the message is understood, but no saving throw is necessary, and the suggestion is ineffective. The material components of the spell are a pair of cylinders, each open at one end, connected by a thin piece of copper wire, and some small part of the subject creature, a hair, bit of nail, etc. I don't particularly like this spell. Sending is a 5th level spell, and Suggestion is a 3rd level spell. So I guess the logic here is that you add the two up and you will have an 8th level spell. I'm not sure if it's worth an 8th level spell slot. But the fact you need some hair or other part of the creature makes things even harder. Perhaps there are better ways to convey the suggestion to your target. 8 levels feels a little bit high for a spell of such limited power. Next is Odaluk's Telekinetic Sphere. It has a range of 2 inches, a casting time of 4 segments, a duration of 1 round per level, and the area of effect is a 1 foot diameter sphere per level of the caster. This spell is exactly the same as the 4th level magic user spell, Odiluk's Resilient Sphere, with the addition that the interior of the globe is virtually weightless, i.e. anything contained within it weighs only 1/16 of its normal weight. Any subject weighing up to 5,000 pounds can be telekinetically lifted in the sphere by the caster. Range of control extends to a maximum distance of 1 inch per level of the caster after the sphere has actually succeeded in encapsulating a subject or subjects. Note that even if more than 5,000 pounds of weight is englobed, the essential weight is but 1/16 of actual, so the orb can be rolled without exceptional effort. Because of the reduced weight, rapid motion or falling within the field of the sphere is relatively harmless to the object therein, although it can be disastrous should the globe disappear when the subject inside is high above a hard surface. In addition to the material components for the resilient sphere, the caster must have a pair of small bar magnets to effectuate this spell. That's more like it, if you ask me. So I kind of liked Odiluk's Resilient Sphere, had a lot of possibilities. This adds to it. I will point out that while a 1 foot diameter sphere per level of the caster doesn't sound big, you have to be 16th level to get an 8th level spell. So that's a 16-foot diameter sphere. So you can fit quite a few people in there, or quite a large creature too. Nothing precludes the magic user in the party or an ally or allies to be within the sphere in order to go through some dangerous area protected by the sphere. I like this spell much more than the others so far. And the last spell is Sync. It has a range of 1 inch per level, a casting time of 8 segments. The duration and the saving throw are both special, and the area of effect is one creature or one object of 1 cubic inch per level of caster. When the magic user casts a sync spell, he or she must chant the spell for 4 segments without interruption. At that juncture, the subject creature or object will become rooted to the spot unless a saving throw versus spell with respect to a creature or a saving throw versus disintegration for an object with magical properties is successful. Note, magical properties include those of magic items as listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide, those of items enchanted or otherwise of magical origin, and those of items with protection type spells or with permanent magical properties or similar spells upon them. Items of a non-magical nature are not entitled to a saving throw. The subject will also become of the same density as the surface upon which it stands at this juncture if its saving throw was not successful. The spellcaster now has the option of seizing his or her spell and leaving the subject as it is, in which case the spell will lose its dwemer in 4 turns, and the subject will return to normal. If the magic user proceeds with the spell, the subject will begin to slowly sink into the ground. On the 5th segment, the subject will sink to 1/4 of its height. On the 6th, another quarter. On the 17th, another, and on the 8th segment it will be totally sunken into the ground. This virtual entombment will place a living subject into a state which duplicates stasis, but does not otherwise harm the subject. Non-living or living, the subject will exist in undamaged form in the surface into which it was sunk. Its upper extremity is far beneath the surface as the subject has height, i.e. a 6-foot high subject will be 6 feet beneath the surface, while a 60-foot high subject will have its uppermost portion 60 feet below ground level. If the ground around the subject is somehow removed, the spell is broken and the subject will return to normal, although it will not then rise up. Such spells as Dig, Transmute Rock to Mud, and Freedom, the reverse of imprisonment, will not harm the subject of a sync spell and will be helpful in recovering it in many cases. If a Detect Magic spell is cast over an area upon which a sync spell was used, it will reveal a faint dwemer of undefinable nature, even if the subject is beyond detection range. If the subject is within range of the Detect Magic, the dwemer will be noted as magic of an enchantment alteration nature. This is the kind of spell I like. The area of effect is huge. A 1-inch cube per level of the caster is essentially 16 1-inch cubes. That could be a 2-inch by 2-inch by 8-inch object. That's pretty big. Nothing says that the object has to be cubical, or there's always a bit of a debate. The volume referred to the smallest volume needed to encapsulate the object in terms of a cube or rectangular type shape, or is it the actual volume of the object somewhere somebody is coming out of a bat yelling Eureka? There's a lot of interesting use of the spell, obviously in a siege situation, which might be more common in high level play. This tends to also be closer to domain type play. You could use it on siege engines and other things. Maybe the attackers could use it on parts of the fortifications. You'd have to think about that. It doesn't say that you have to use it on an object that's on a solid surface. So you could use it on a boat on water, and this will cause the boat to sink. And if the boat has a mast that's, say, 25 feet high, that boat will now be 25 feet under the water, causing perhaps some of the crew to drown, certainly taking the ship out of the battle. So that's another possible use of it. I'm sure players and GMs will be able to come up with interesting things. The permanent nature of the entombment is certainly not a fun fate. but I could see this being the start of an adventure. There's a big construction project, and as they are digging for the foundations, they come across this object that's been sunk there. Maybe it's magical, maybe it's a person they come across that's in stasis, and now they come out of stasis, and something from long ago, perhaps it's an evil creature that comes out from stasis and now will ravage the land. Perhaps it was a member of the forces of good. That could also lead to interesting adventures. Perhaps they were fighting the same enemy as the PCs, but centuries or millennia ago. There's a lot of interesting things, an adventure seeds in this spell, which is one of the reasons I like it. Quick recap, we have Binding, another one of the spells for extraplanar creatures. Demand, which I feel is very weak for an 8th level spell. Odaluk's Telekinetic Sphere, which I quite like. And Sync, which I like also, has a lot of interesting possibilities it can bring into a campaign. This has been the Grumpy Old Slan, looking at 8th level magic user spells in Unearthed Arcana.